Hi, I'm Chris Ippolito, and welcome to the Get Coached podcast, where I'm documenting my journey from employee to entrepreneur while featuring the coaches that are helping me along the way. Each episode, these coaches provide actionable advice to help me and you, the audience, find more success as entrepreneurs. I invite you to join the journey so we can go and grow together. Welcome to another episode of the Get Coached podcast. In this episode, I sat down with Wendi Michelle, who is an entrepreneur, published author, and precision wellness specialist. What makes Wendi's approach so unique is the diverse education and background she draws from. Wendi and I talked about how every entrepreneur should invest in their health if they want to become top performers. Please enjoy this conversation with Wendi Michelle. Hi, Wendi.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
So good, thanks.
Welcome to the Get Coach podcast. Very excited to have you on because this is going to be a bit of a different topic. We're going to be talking about health. So rather than spoiling what we're going to talk about, I'm hoping you could share your story as far as your career in the space of health and how you got there and kind of how you got to where you're at right now.
Sure. So thank you for having me, by the way. I'm really excited about this as well. I have always been in the health and wellness industry since I can remember. I've always been interested in being active and so on, but got certified as a personal trainer in high school and started teaching people about supplementation and nutrition and so on, and thought I knew everything. And then when I was in my mid-20s, I started getting some strange symptoms that didn't really make sense because I definitely was practicing what I preached. And little by little, these symptoms progressed, got worse, layered on top of each other. And at some point, I became pretty much bedridden. So I couldn't really walk. I had seizures. I had a mini stroke. And of course, none of this stuff was of any consequence. We couldn't figure out why this was happening. So it forced me to really dig into my own health. And in doing so, because I didn't know what was wrong, I was reading about every condition, every possible reason that this could be happening, infectious diseases all the way to cancers and everything in between. And then taking this information back to doctors and asking them, well, what about this? And have we run this lab? And how about this prescription? Have we tried that? And so I was really having to do all of my own work, and they were just somebody to bounce things off of. Unfortunately, there wasn't a lot of help for me through them, except for that they were, I guess, tolerating my questions. And so it was in that time frame, which went on several years, that I saw a lot of gaps in the health industry, and especially being in it and thinking beforehand, I knew so much. And now I felt so ill-equipped to tell anybody anything about how to be healthy, because clearly I didn't know. I never talked to my clients about hormones or their immune system or their microbiome. I didn't learn that stuff. And a lot of people, in the process of establishing what was going on, as I'm asking these same questions to practitioners and medical professionals, they didn't really know either anything about autoimmune diseases and why they happened, or how to effectively deal with them, or the microbiome, or there was a lot of issues in information. There's a lot of lack of information and understanding. So I made it a pact that I would not even begin to start talking to other people about health ever until I felt like I knew enough to at least speak to a topic intelligently, and or had an expert I could refer somebody to, so that they wouldn't spend as much time as I spent going from person to person to person to person and spending ungodly amounts of money and just their time, especially when it's in a very powerful time like that in your 20s and 30s. that's a lot of time to spend seeking information just so that you know you can wake up tomorrow. It just didn't seem right. So I spent 5 to 7 years of just solid research and learning every different arm of medicine, from holistic, naturopathic, homeopathy, Western medicine, traditional Chinese medicine, you name it. I've researched it, or I've experienced it, or I've met people who do it and asked them a lot of questions as well. And so now what I do is what's called precision wellness. And that is where I work with people individually to assess what their goal is and what it is that they'd like. Sometimes it's not really a health issue, it's more of a proactive, hey, I have a lot of responsibility in my life. I actually have this desire to be a high achiever, a peak performer. I want to make sure that nothing gets in my way. I'm proactively planning to be successful, and I'd like for nothing, or at least to do as best I can to prevent anything from stopping this progress and what it is, this mission that I'm on, so to speak. So I work with people to help them establish those programs and protocols in their life, and however that works out for them specifically.
That's awesome. And that's also why I wanted you on the show, because um so for myself personally, as well as really the audience in which I'm building this for, is entrepreneurs, aspiring entrepreneurs. So if you're an entrepreneur, you're typically putting in a ton of hours, right? And not only is it going to be physically demanding, but probably more so mentally demanding. And so right now, my current circumstances is I've got a full-time job during the day. So doing, 40 hours worth of work, but technically it's like 45 or whatever it is. And then it's evenings and weekends and doing this and looking to build my own asset. And the struggle that I'm having right now, that I think a lot of other entrepreneurs would have, is I just run out of energy. Like I'm so exhausted by the end of the workday that I really struggle to focus on the work that needs to happen.
Mhm.
And so when we originally connected, that was instantly the topic that I wanted to talk about. Plus, I've been interested in health and wellness for quite some time. My priorities have shifted so much in recent months
Mhm.
that it's not as high of a priority for me, which is not a great thing, because, like I shared, I'm trying to build a business with a lack of energy right now.
Yeah.
So uh, I wanted to start with hmm, maybe I'll just ask you the question. Where is that place that you would start? So you're sitting down with somebody who is approaching you and saying, like, I want to be a peak performer. I want
Mhm.
boundless amounts of energy so that I can put in that work, whether it's an entrepreneur or a high performance athlete. What's typically that first area that you start looking at with them to see opportunities, not necessarily problems, but opportunities?
So it's a relatively complex and has evolved over the last 15 years, really, of an intake consultation type conversation, where I ask questions that in some cases are seemingly or irrelevant, right? Because it's not really about, oh, I'm losing energy. That's a very, it's a superficial thing. There's a lot of stuff that's underneath that that I need to dig into in order to establish where can we start, because for everybody that's different. Why one person is running out of energy and another person is running out of energy, or whatever goal they might have, right? Like, I'm not recovering fast enough for maybe a high level athlete, or uh I just have brain fog. I don't have very good word recall, and I'm struggling to communicate. I feel like it's different than it used to be. So it's more or less just listening to people and hearing what it is they're desiring, and working through that in the detailed conversation to find out where we can start, because for everybody it's going to be different, and that's why it's also precision wellness, is that it's about finding out from that individual where those gaps might be for them, and helping them to identify areas that they feel like they have untapped power or potential. So that's step one, is identifying those areas. They typically line up. The area that I want to improve is the area that I have this personal belief that there's more, and I want them more. So how do I get them more? So we identify that. And then we rate it on a scale of 1 to 10, because I'm a firm believer that you can't make progress if you don't measure.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't know where you start, how do we know we got better? So let's say we'll use energy as an example, just because you brought it up. If I asked you right now on a scale of 1 to 10, where do you think your energy is versus where your potential is? What might you say?
Well, it depends the time of the day. So the funny thing is, at near the end of the day, like late afternoon, I would say my energy level's like a 2. But then
Mhm.
I'll have dinner and I get up, move around, and especially in the evenings where I have a call, I almost go into like conservation mode, if that makes any sense, because I
Yes.
know that I'm going to need a little bit more energy when I'm
Mhm.
on the call, because I want it to come across that I have energy. Though by the time we're done this call, I'll probably end up crashing. So right now, like the way I feel like I'm at a 7 to 8 kind of thing.
Okay, so based on that answer, I would say we need to, especially because since I've talked to you a couple of times since we initially connected as well, you've mentioned the afternoon. And so
Yeah.
that is a recurring theme for you. It seems to come up, even though there's other times too where you notice the lack of energy, but the afternoon seems to be the one that comes up the most naturally.
Yeah.
And 2 is a pretty low number. So how can you be effective and efficient in the afternoon when you still have a couple hours left before you need that family time? So it's a 2. So then that's how it's been rated. So then it becomes, the next step is commit to a level, at least 1, to level up by 1 point every day. Meaning, if it's a 2, tomorrow your commitment to yourself is to level up to 3. Then we work on how. What
Mm,
are the methods that we're going to try to get you to a 3? I don't necessarily need you to be a 4 tomorrow, and you don't either. You're going to be pumped about a 3. A 3 is going to be a major needle mover for you. So we're going to figure out ways to get you to a 3, and then the next steps then become reevaluate and recommit.
right.
So we'll start to see those levels coming up in the afternoon, and then the best part about that process is that you start to see other things in and around that improve as well. Everything levels up. When the thing that you feel like you're not tapping into fully starts to level up, everything else does too. And if it starts to take away from other things, we know that's not the right space and we have to go after something different.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense because, again, speaking just from the personal side of it, and I know a lot of people listening probably feel the same way, as
Mhm.
far, especially that afternoon crash. I would say that is probably one of the more common time frames for a lot of people when they say, like, I just, all my energy's gone and it's the afternoon and I don't really know what to do. But the way it ends up impacting the other things, like you said, is my focus for work is like non-existent. So I end up having to make sure that I save work that doesn't require a lot of focus. But if I
Mm.
don't have that kind of work, then it's like, well, what do I do? And then the other area that I would say that it definitely affects me is the family. Like you said, it's like, okay, now it is finally I'm done work, and it's like I
Mhm.
want to go spend some time with my wife and my son, and it's like I just like, I got no energy. But I kind of like, I almost like force myself, and then it like, it's weird. I push myself a little bit, and then all of a sudden the energy starts kicking in.
Mhm.
um but I don't want it to be too much about me. I want to use me as maybe like an example for some of the things.
Sure.
So a question I'm kind of curious about is, from your experience, what are some of the more common, um I almost want to call them like thieves of energy, or of health actually in general? I know that might be a very generalized question, but what are some of the more common things that the average person are doing that's having that significant negative impact on their life?
I'm going to have to go with food as my first one because there is so much power in our nutrition choices. It can make or break the day. It takes some time, obviously, to build up. Let's say you are making less than ideal choices because you are limited on time or limited on money or resources, and then I all of a sudden come in and switch some things around. You might not feel that energy shift immediately, but over the course of a week or two, it's going to make a huge difference. And it's not even just the content of the meals per se, but the timing of the meals. And in some cases, some people they really thrive on a longer fast period, specifically men, not so much women. Our blood sugar levels are distinctly different because of our hormones, but for men, a lot of men really thrive and can get into a flow zone when they have been fasting and have just like a little bit of fat and some coffee in the morning. And that's not everybody. That can be an individual thing, but it goes back to just the nutrition piece, food or not food, and if food, what food, and how does it get timed in accordance with the rest of the day. The other thing would be movement. When people haven't moved yet, they haven't got blood flowing, it's affecting how they're thinking, it's affecting how they're feeling, it drives everything. So whether or not you exercise in the morning or you don't, that's going to make a huge difference too. And those seem very elementary. So they're not like mind blowing statements. I'm sure that this is not surprising to many people.
Yeah.
But I do think that because we rely so heavily on this mass overarching, everybody do this thing and you're going to be well. That's why they're kind of tired of hearing that, because they're like, I did the food thing and it didn't work, or I did the exercise thing and it didn't work, or I bought all the supplements and it didn't work. Well, because that was a very blanketed solution. But when we get more specific, then we can tailor it to the individual, and then they can get some of that energy back, and there isn't such a pull on their health because they're just trying the blanket solutions. They're actually able to utilize some more of the advanced technology and science that we have access to.
Yeah, I am so glad you said that, because that has been, I would say, my biggest, I don't even know if I would call it frustration anymore. It's just more my observation on the
Mhm.
world of nutrition and nutritional sciences, is that when you listen to the
Mhm.
masses say you should eat this, this, and this, and that's for everybody. Whereas when I started really getting into this and listening to Tim Ferriss was good for this, because he has such a wide variety of people that come on to his show, and then I go and dig deeper into his guests' career. But I started learning more about the things of like microbiome, and how not everybody's microbiome actually reacts the same way with different kinds of food. And the example that they gave was what's considered like a staple healthy food, like kale, I think it was the example. And they were saying,
Mhm.
so kale, we all say is healthy. However, your microbiome and my microbiome might be different, in that for you it's good, but for me it's actually toxic. So it sounds like you've got some experience there. Do you mind sharing that a little bit?
Sure. So there's actually two areas that I'd love to speak to. You're right on as far as the microbiome. Microbiome is really what sets us apart from each other, and specifically when it comes to diet, but in general and overall, it is a huge part of our individual fingerprint. How we respond to different foods, absolutely. How well we break them down. Is there any issue with digestion? Is there food that's getting through our intestinal wall and floating through our bloodstream? There's so many factors that if we just strictly looked there, you really need to get precise for that individual. And there's some really great testing opportunities and options for that if somebody wanted to get very specific. The
Can
other
we
area.
can we touch on that real quick before I forget to ask?
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely. So there's a company that I think is the best. So as of this point right now, it's called Viome with a
biome. Yeah,
V.
yeah,
Yeah, Viome is, I think, the leading in science and research. Of course, it's a rapidly evolving study, and we're learning every day about the different strains of bacteria in our gut and what they do and what role they play, and how do we diversify that population? Do we want to diversify that population, and based on where we live or our goals, how much can we kind of hack that microbiome to get what it is that we need? We're still learning. But if you wanted a benchmark, going back to what I was saying earlier, you can't really tell if you improved if you haven't measured from the beginning. It's a great place to start. Viome is good. I do like them a lot. And then the other area is our blood glucose levels and monitoring our blood glucose. And this is something that I found very fascinating, and I continue to. So when I first started doing nutrition as a personal trainer and really studying nutrition, I learned about the glycemic index. I learned that, there's a scale from 0 to 100, and all foods land somewhere in the middle as to how much of an impact it has on your blood sugar. So maybe you choose a banana, but the banana has like a 50 glycemic index, and so you're gonna get a good spike, but then you're gonna get a crash. But then if you choose grapes, then you get a bigger crash, or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
Watermelon is so bad because it's like such a high sugar rush, and then you crash. You might as well just have a Snickers bar. I've heard everything. So what I love to tell people now is that we know the glycemic index is really just a kind of a basic measurement system, but it doesn't mean much to the individual because everybody processes food differently, and their blood glucose responds differently. So now we can get things like continuous blood glucose monitors. There's this company that I love based out of Chicago. They're relatively new, and they've been able to expand and scale continuous blood glucose monitor options and offerings to people in every state. Whereas before, you'd really have to kind of have diabetes to even be able to get one of those. If you could, some people can talk their doctors into that. Like maybe Tim Ferriss could talk his doctor to that, but it's not something that majority of us have access to.
Yeah.
But this company does. And so you wear this continuous blood glucose monitor for, I believe they have a 3-month or a 6-month program. And all of that data, that continuous data is being fed back to the database, and there's a dietitian who's watching it. So you're logging your food, and she's getting real-time feedback about how that particular food is affecting your blood glucose. And blood glucose has a lot to do with our energy during the day, and our motivation, and our focus. So it doesn't really matter what you're looking to improve. If you know what foods are going to tank you, that's very powerful information, but we don't know that unless we're monitoring it on a continuous basis. Even if I was to prick somebody's finger right after they eat something, and then an hour after they eat something, it still isn't as accurate. Right. So that's great technology to incorporate, that's going to give people a lot of information relatively quickly, so they can fast track whatever goal it is that they have by 6 to 8 months, which is huge, especially when you talk about entrepreneurs who are like, how can I squeeze the most out of the few things that I have time to do? That is a definite game changer.
Yeah. What's the name of the company?
It's called NutriSense, and I'll send you a link to that one as well, so you can put it in the
I want to
notes.
make sure to include that in the notes. That's exciting, because I remember thinking, this was like years ago, as far as like, wouldn't it be awesome if there was a way to like basically constantly monitor your body and the nutrition, the micros and the macros that you needed. This is obviously a little bit different because it's glucose, but that's a step in the right direction, where eventually we'll have wearable technology that will be on us, and it'll just feed information to the apps on our mobile devices. And still, whether it's going to be a person on the other end, or maybe eventually some AI or machine learning, we'll start getting notifications like, ding, oh, your blood sugar is a little low, go eat this food, because based on your microbiome, this is the best food you could be eating. Like, that gets me so excited.
Same.
Because to me, that is where nutrition needs to go, so that we can get rid of all this absolute garbage information that people are pandering and taking advantage of the misinformation that's going on there. So as you can tell, I'm getting kind of worked up about this. So let me ask you a question. What is on that subject, actually, what is something besides this blood glucose level monitoring, what are some of the other advancements in health that you get excited about and hope become more mainstream?
For sure, HRV. HRV is an easy answer for me on that. That's your heart rate variability. So it's the activity that's occurring in between heartbeats, which is believe it or not, it's a lot of stuff that happens in between each heartbeat. And it's the information that is tracked with the fetus. When a woman is carrying a baby, they will look at the heart rate variability as they're checking the health of the fetus. And then we were born, and then nobody looks at it anymore. So why was that information significant enough beyond just heartbeat? But then we're born and we don't look at that anymore. So now a lot of these wearables include an HRV element to it to track your heart rate variability. It is a direct insight into your autonomic nervous system. So the stuff that just is the programs that's running, breathe, heartbeats, all the different things that you don't have to think or remind yourself to do every day. But it's also the stuff that's when you have stress and you're like you or me or other people who are just trying to perform at their highest level. We have very strong wills, and we have really strong minds, and we have determination, and we have these mindsets where like we're going after this. It doesn't matter. If I have to crawl across the finish line, I will crawl across the finish line. If I have to go with tears and sweat and all the things to show up for like my victory photo, it doesn't matter. I'm coming that way. The problem is when you have that mind frame, your body, you don't see or experience some of the cues from the body that, hey, there's a bit of an issue going on here. If we don't slow down, this is going to not just slow us up. This is actually going to knock us out. And for, again, same example, people like us, getting knocked out of the game is not part of the plan.
Right.
We don't want to be slowed down either, but wouldn't it be great if we knew how to adjust the gas pedal based on, are we getting close to being knocked out? Is this time to take a little bit rest so that I can continue? Or do I want to push things until I truly crash? And HRV is exactly that. It's an indication of how healthy your autonomic nervous system is doing. So the things that your brain doesn't want to talk about, your body's talking about it. And it'll give you an indication of, okay, maybe you'll see HRV drop a bit if you're starting to get a little bit of a flu or some kind of illness, or maybe there's something going on emotionally. Maybe you have some emotional stress, or you have some mental stress or something. You're not sleeping well. Things like that, you start to see your HRV go down, and it'll happen before you actually crash. And this is great. Why it's great for athletes too, because then I have all of them on some kind of monitor for HRV as well, because it helps me establish how they're recovering and when and how much they should train. Because if their HRV is low, their risk for injury is that much higher. So that's a day where they might need to back off a bit, just till their autonomic nervous system can catch up with their mind, so to speak.
That I've heard of this before. I think it was Tom Bilyeu who was talking about it. Anyways, how do you monitor that? So are there devices that allow you to monitor? Okay.
Yeah. So it's a very simple, you can do a couple of different ways. One, there's a program called, it's an app. I'll have to send you the link. It's HRV something. I'll send you. That's not very helpful, but there's an app, and you can actually get a chest strap, similar to like what we used to wear in the gym to monitor our heart rate.
Yeah.
Well, you wake up in the morning, put the chest strap on, turn this app on, which is Bluetooth to the chest strap. 1 minute, it'll give you an HRV reading, and then it tracks it in the app, and it actually gives you a number, or a color. Like green means go, yellow is take it easy, red is you probably should stay in bed, or if you can, hang out around the house today,
right,
or whatever the case may be. That's one way to do it, the simplest and the cheapest way to do it. The other way is a wearable like Whoop, which is something that it's a wristband that you wear all the time. And
L-O-O-P, right?
it's Whoop, like
Oh,
WHOOP.
Whoop. I thought it was
Yeah,
Loop.
Whoop.
Okay, Whoop. Okay.
Yep. That one is really awesome. I wear that one. That one is tracking, I believe their technology tracks the most data per minute more than any other tracking or wearable on the marketplace.
Cool.
They're kind of in the wearables. They're where like Viome is in microbiome studies. So you'll see a lot of athletes wearing Whoop, and you just sleep with it, and it gives you not just HRV information in the morning, but it's also telling you how well you slept, how long you spent in deep sleep, how long you spent in REM sleep, how many disturbances while you were sleeping. And then when you get to the gym, go into the app, turn on whatever activity you're about to do, and it tracks your activity and tells you how many calories you burned approximately, and where your heart rate was and how long you were in a particular heart rate zone, and so on. So it's like, it's kind of a catch-all. Whoop is great for that because you don't really have to think too much about it. It covers most of the bases, and it's just on your wrist. And I think that they have relatively low payment, like it's just like a monthly payment, like a membership fee, and the wearable comes with it.
Oh, okay.
So you're not
Okay.
having to like put out a whole bunch of money for the watch and then you pay monthly for it. I think it's just kind of all wrapped up in one.
Right. That's smart. That's really smart, actually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I like that. I think that's a great way to do HRV as well.
Cool. That sounds really interesting. Especially if it's like a monthly subscription and affordable, because obviously, like you said, like if we can get more insight on how our bodies are operating and know when we can push it versus when we need to scale it back, that I just feel like that's such important information. And then combining that with something like just understanding how your gut works and how you actually like what are the best foods for you or the foods to avoid. I feel like just even those two things alone would probably create some significant results for the average person.
Significant. And don't forget the amount of energy that you're not spending on thinking about those things now.
Yeah.
So that, energy just gets, you just start having this additional energy bank to use because you're subconsciously not wondering, what should I eat? Is this the right thing? Oh, I shouldn't have made that decision. Now I'm really, feeling bad about that decision. And so now you're like, there's so much energy that goes into that subconscious remunerating over the food and the activity. And did I sleep? And am I expressing myself? Like, to just know that if you want to tap into that data, that information, it's there. And that frees you up mentally to do what it is that you're trying to do at the best and the highest level possible.
Right. Cool. I'm excited to look into this stuff now. On the flip side,
Mm-hmm.
what are some of the things that are happening right now in the health and nutrition space that are, in your opinion, just the things that you want to die as quickly as possible and to disappear and never show their faces again? What are some of the more negative things that are occurring?
I think anything that is a miracle cure, and there's so many like pills you can supposedly take or things you can supposedly do that will fix whatever problems you have overnight. And those things, they just need to go in general. And there's not one I can think of off the top of my head because it's constantly changing. So depending on when somebody listens to this, there's probably a new one anyway. There's no magic pill. There's no magic supplement. There's no magic at all. Our bodies are incredible. They do miraculous things day in and day out. There's no shortage of miraculous things occurring. It's just, are we in alignment with the miracle that we are in order to give our bodies the opportunity to perform at its optimal level, or are we holding it back? That's the only difference, really. So I will be very excited when I don't have to undo a lot of the false understandings about nutrition, aesthetics, exercise, but specifically nutrition. There's so many crazy beliefs out there about like, well, if I heard if I have this, then this is going to happen to me. Or I heard that this, that GMOs are bad. So I don't really want to, I can't really afford organic fruits and vegetables, but I can buy the packaged products that are non-GMO. And meanwhile, they're like, the ingredient list is like miles long,
Yeah.
and they're not thinking about that. So it'll be a really great day because people will be so much more free when they're not trying to go after an overnight miracle, and they're just in awe of what their body can do in general, and they're
Yeah.
trying to work alongside that.
Yeah, I think that'll be a good day too. And the optimist and utopian side of me kind of thinks that if we can get more affordable technology, already what you've shared, right? Like Viome, the womb or
Whoop.
womb, was it?
Whoop.
Whoop, that's what it was.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Whoop. The blood glucose monitor, like as we get more of these types of technologies in place and it becomes more commonplace for everybody to have, similar to like a mobile device, you would think that all that stuff will go away because they'll be now like we can basically talk to our bodies and go like, well, what do you want? Right? Or our
Yeah.
bodies are going to tell us what it wants or when
Mm-hmm.
we go or stop. But I just I think that we're always going to have that kind of garbage. It's going to
Mm-hmm.
start changing, and it's really disappointing because the as difficult as it is, even mentally, for people to put the effort in and stay disciplined to stay healthy and stay active and all that kind of stuff, and then we start getting more and more tools to help us with that. The other side of the market is going to just create more and more things that are going to be wanting to pull us the other direction and cause damage to us, really. And that's really disappointing, but not much we can do about it. That's the way
Right.
our economy works.
That, and also people, I mean, humans do a really great job of insisting on instant gratification. We are just as self-destructive in, because as a business owner, if I don't see a need or a desire for something, why would I build a business around that? If I
Right.
didn't think anybody was going to come buy it or come knocking on my door for it, well, if it doesn't make money, it doesn't make sense, right? So the industry has grown to the extent that it has is because humans, because we want the easy way out. We want the easy solution, because to do things right, I mean, anything worth having is hard work. And people don't want to do that work, especially when it comes to food and stuff, because it's deep work. It seems very superficial, but the stuff that people struggle with around food and exercise is actually deep work. It is not just about like, I don't feel like it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, why? Why? It's so crazy how many levels I can get from a very blanket overarching statement like that. And so I think so long as we don't want to do the hard work, there's always going to be business opportunity for a magic pill.
Right. Right. It's very true. On what about on the side of fitness? So we've talked a little bit about nutrition, and so on the side of fitness, what are some of the, in the case of an entrepreneur who's really struggling in their perception anyways, struggling for time to set aside to exercise, um what's a go-to exercise that you would tell somebody to start with to at least form the habit and then build upon? Is there a go-to exercise that you recommend?
I'm going to answer this two different ways
Sure.
because I want to kind of cover it from two different angles.
Okay.
The first one is more practical, and for people who just want an answer, I think kettlebells are amazing. If you can get a kettlebell and throw it wherever you are, at your desk, in the kitchen, wherever, put them around your office, put them around your house, and just commit to doing 25 kettlebell swings every time you pass it. That really engages almost every single muscle group of the body when done correctly. So please make sure that you're doing it
Yeah.
correctly, and that it's not like a 2-pounder, so that you're like, oh, that was, I mean, there's work involved, of course, but that's a very simple, practical no extra time spent, because what is 25 dumbbells or kettlebell swings really in the essence of time? Maybe a minute, unless you get really, really good, and then you got 30 seconds, right? So that's a very practical answer. The other one though is also to try to shift the mindset about what is exercise, because I don't think that we really have evolved to the extent at which exercise has to be in a gym, or that it has to be lifting weights, or it has to have dumbbells or a treadmill. I really firmly believe that we're supposed to be outside and playing like we did when we were kids and it was recess. When we need to get out and we need to blow off steam, we need to find joy, we need to experience something fun and adrenaline rushing, it's play. And so I tell majority of my clients, just go play. And what does that even mean? And it takes them some time to figure that out. But once they remember, I actually really loved the monkey bars when I was little. And now all of a sudden they join a gymnastics class and they're swinging on, they're doing work on, pull up bars and whatever. They're having fun. So it's not even like exercise, and they don't even mind taking the time anymore because it's something that they really look forward to. And then it just creates for them a solution without even having to necessarily incorporate quote unquote exercise. They just have movement. And I think that that's an effective strategy as well, is to redefine for the individual what is exercise, and then if it brings you joy, then go do that.
Right. I very much appreciate that answer, because I think the idea of using play as exercise, and or your exercise being playtime, it not only does it, I would assume anyways, not only is it taking care of you physically, but it's also a great mental thing, right? Because if you're going to the gym and the only reason you're going there is like, oh, I need to exercise, and you go in with like this mindset that you're like, I just have to do this,
Mm-hmm.
that almost is like, I'm sure it's beneficial in the sense that you're physically moving and exercising, but mentally it just feels like you're almost expending so much more extra energy, because you're like having to convince yourself to go and do it and enjoy it, even though you're probably not.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you're like, you know what, I'm just going to go run with my dog and play fetch or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
and you're still exercising, but there's joy almost in it, and
Mm-hmm.
there's like this extra benefit that you get out of it. So I do very much appreciate that answer, and very much excited for the summer, because it's still kind of cold here in Edmonton.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and it's true what you say too. We know this. Science has proven it, that whatever we are thinking, our body's listening to us. So if we're thinking to ourselves, "Ugh, I don't want to do this. Doesn't do anything anyway." Our body's like, "Noted. It's not going to do anything anyway. We'll just there's this dialogue that occurs between our mind and our bodies, and we forget that whatever we're thinking, whatever we're deciding, whatever our perception is, our body is ready to respond to that perception of environment. So if I'm dreading going to work and I don't like work, my cortisol levels will measurably be higher than if I change my mind and I decide, even if I have to fake it till I make it, change my mind. I decide I can't wait I love to be at work. I really love it, or find something that I love about it. My cortisol levels are going to decrease. So the expression of our very DNA is based on perception. So of course, then any success from any type of exercise practice is going to go back to how did we feel about it while we were doing it. And you can draw a correlation between how successful somebody has become and how much they've were able to find enjoyment in it. It's directly connected. So when you just go and love something, you're going to have great success.
Yeah, the power of the mind is, I think that's another area that I'm excited to see actually science dig even deeper into it, as far as how powerful our thinking and our mind can be,
Mm-hmm.
and all the benefits and effects that it has on our health, success, life, and such.
Yeah.
um I, just because this is such a broad conversation, I wanted to ask a question. What's something I haven't asked you that you would want to share with the audience?
I think supplementation is something to chat about because I feel like a lot of people spend a lot of money there. And especially now with biohacking and executives trying to figure their way around, will save time, feel awesome, be fully focused. There's can there it's very simple to spend a lot of money quickly
Yep.
on either technology or supplementation. And supplementation is, I think, easiest because technology, I think people are still trying to figure out, and it seems a little bit overwhelming and like it's going to take some time because there's a learning curve to it. The supplementation could be like, what are the pills I can take? And I feel like there's definitely a few that if you can't get your stuff from food, if you're having a hard time getting all the nutrients in, or you're having a difficult time, really feeling like you're powered up in every mitochondria of your body. And that will take some time. Let's say you're even employing all these new practices, but that takes time for your at a cellular level for you to rise to the next level, right? So what can you do under those circumstances? And I think there's a handful of supplements that really move the needle for everybody. That you can't get it from food necessarily, or at the levels that we know scientifically will change things. And so one of them is colostrum, which there is one particular supplement that I've been reading a lot about and learning a lot about this last, I don't know, maybe this past year, and just really diving into the understanding of it and how it's so effective it doesn't matter what goal it is. I think for the last year, pretty much every client I've encountered, it makes sense to suggest that they supplement with colostrum. There's one particular extract within the colostrum called augment sodine, which is it's basically like the superhero of the colostrum, and it has amino acids and immunoglobulins and all of these things for your immune system. It's extremely effective at increasing your IGF-1 levels and great for body composition. Plus, it's also really good for depression. I mean, it's so vast. I really love that particular product, and that's a company called Fortizel. And I really love their product, but I love the people behind it, and that's something that's really important to me. There's another one is NAD. NADH is great for the mitochondria. It's like basically powering the cell.
That is that one mainly for brain? Am I thinking the right one?
It does.
NA,
And
okay.
yeah. So NAD, well, it has again. It's another one of when it comes to supplementation, I'm all about like if I'm going to spend my money, I don't want a 1-for-1.
Right.
I want like a 1-for-100. So when I
Okay.
spend my money, I want to know that whatever I'm getting in return, because I understand the human body and it's evolving all the time and seasons change and my immune system changes and my stress levels change. I want to know that it's going to adapt alongside me, and I'm not going to have to keep going and getting a new supplement every time my life changes, because God knows I'd have to have a new supplement every hour, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's a real thing. So NADH is just it's instant energy. Athletes use it. I use it all day long during like when I'm really having to focus. I'm either researching or I'm writing content or I'm speaking. It's like a little lozenge. It just dissolves under your tongue and it's like instant energy, but it's not like caffeine. It's not like jittery energy. It's just cellular energy. But it also does things like recycles glutathione, which then reactivates vitamin C and reactivates vitamin E. And these are the nutrients that we need to be reactivated so that they can continually nourish us and do what they need to be doing at a cellular level. So like that. And then I also love chlorella, which is like a seaweed, and it's also basically like a food. So it's helpful to supplement if you're looking for nutrients outside of what you get from your food. It's a great option because it has a good bulk of them. It's the food that they give astronauts because it covers almost every basis. And again, it's not a 1-for-1. It's more like a 1-for-100. So if I was going to have supplements or recommend any supplements, those are kind of my top 3. And then of course, well, I have to add in mushrooms because I think mushrooms are phenomenal as well. Reishi or turkey tail is a great one. Four Sigmatic has some really great coffees that are mushroom based, and I love that company because I appreciate that they're really educating consumers. They met consumers where they're at, which is at coffee. And they threw some mushrooms in to get the conversation going about how fungus is so effective for us and our health, and not just our brain, but our entire bodies. They're immune system modulators, which is exactly what everybody needs right now to modulate their immune system, not to be too crazy, not to be suppressed, but just, middle of the road balance. So those are like my top 4. And I think that with those, people would also see a pretty significant shift as well.
Tim Ferriss had, I can't remember the name of the guest, but he had an entire episode dedicated to fungi and the benefits of it. And I learned a ton about that. I didn't realize how ingrained fungi was in our ancient cultures, and how beneficial it can be. And just some of the research that they're doing in psilocybin and some of the kind of psychoactive fungi out there. And yeah, it was very interesting. That's one that I would highly recommend anybody who's listening to this and found like that part of the conversation really interesting. Go find that. I'll put it in the show notes. You'll learn a ton about fungi and its importance to the human species.
It was probably Paul Stamantes. I believe that's his name. He's like, if it's the one I'm thinking of, because he's kind of the go-to he's like the fungus.
Yeah, that's like his only thing.
Yeah,
that's what
he's
he
like
does.
A fungus expert. Yeah, he's incredible. He's amazing. I've been following his work for, 15 years.
Cool. Awesome. Well, Wendi, this has been an awesome conversation. I very much appreciated it. Coming out of it, there was a lot that we covered. So what would be the one thing you would suggest the audience start with and focus on to really start shifting that needle, like you said, and to level up? I like you said that, because that's kind of what the whole show is all about, is helping people level up. So what would be that one thing, though, you would suggest they focus on?
I would say I'd go back to the same process that I take people through individually and one-on-one, which is to identify the area that they feel like there's untapped power or potential in, and reflect on that. Be real honest about it with yourself, because it could be anything, and just find one. You don't need to make a long list, because I would only want somebody to identify one out of the gate, and then rate it on a scale of 1 to 10 as to where it is. Then commit to level up at least 1 point every day, and then reevaluate and recommit until they're optimal, which would be at 10 or 11. In my, as far as I'm concerned, I don't know. I feel like the sky is the limit. Like, where can we go, really? But I think identifying those areas, rating them, making a plan for it. And I think that within this show alone, there's at least one thing that we mentioned that they could choose as their one thing to level up, and then reevaluate and recommit.
Yeah, I agree. They could probably re-listen to the episode a few times, a couple of weeks in a row, and go, "Oh, next, I'll do that one next."
Exactly.
So, yeah, I think that's a great recommendation. So, if anybody wanted to connect with you, where is the best place for them to find information about you?
Probably my website is going to be the best. I am on social media on Instagram, but it's kind of hit or miss. I try to not hang out on social media for too long. It's just to me, it's just such a time suck. I'm on there because I do love people and I love to create content, but there's so many other projects I'm excited about. So my website, wendimichelle.com, Wendi with an I, is the best way to reach me. Just, there's a contact page, just reach out right from there.
Awesome. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure. I know that we could have easily talked for a lot longer, because I had questions that I was like, no, I have to hold back. I don't want to take up too much of your time. So thank you so much. I definitely look forward to perhaps some future conversations, and I'll be definitely following you and what you're doing, because I'm super interested in this kind of stuff.
Cool. Well, thank you. And thank you for, creating a platform for people to, to look at, how to be their best versions.
You're welcome, and it's my pleasure. Thanks.
Thank you.
Take care. Thanks for listening to the Get Coached podcast. If you're looking for more information, you can head over to our website, which is getcoachedpodcast.com. You'll find the show notes for this and every other episode there. And if getting actionable advice every week from professional coaches is something you want more of, then make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes.